Hi, my name is Vinay Ratnam, and for my open source contribution project, I decided to work on an issue within Pixar's USD. So USD, it stands for Universal Scene Description, and what it is, it's basically a software to manage 3D computer graphics. And so this is really useful for companies like Pixar who use a lot of 3D computer graphics in their films. And it's basically a software where you can compose these graphics, like separate the qualities and the features of them, and then it allows a big team to like work with it in a manageable way, manageable fashion. So more on to what I exactly did is in USD, so in one of the files, there's an issue popping up with Clang because there's a in the so specifically in this for loop. In the for loop, we have this variable m and we iterate through metadata to get a different m for each iteration, and it contains a string and VT value. And the problem with this is that it actually gives a temporary reference to each value in metadata. And what we want is we actually wanted a value instead of a temporary reference, like the actual value. And so I'll delve more into how I fix that later, but more onto the actual GitHub for the USD. So this is the GitHub for USD. This is actually my fork of it. And in here, you can see all these different documents and stuff. PXR is actually where all the code's in, and that's where I had to actually look through a couple of these and find that PXR is where all the code is in, and then I worked through there. And so for this, for USD, for my whole project actually, the hardest part was actually installing all the dependencies and stuff. So installing the dependencies, so first I had to clone the repository, and then I started installing all these dependencies. And I realized I was missing this one, I was missing that one. It actually took a lot of time to debug what I was missing since I kept on trying to run USD and it wouldn't run because I didn't have all these dependencies. And one of the biggest things is I didn't have the Xcode developer tools installed. And so I had to install those. I had to get all these up and running. And that was probably the hardest part of this project. I had to figure out how to debug all of that through the terminal and make sure to pip install all the things I need to pip install the developer tools for Xcode, and so on and so forth. But now that I got that out of the way, so once I was done installing everything, I could actually work with the code. So when I was working with the code, so before on the issue page, this is how the for loop looked. So the problem is we're getting a temporary reference for a temporary reference from metadata and putting it into M for each iteration. So how I fixed that and actually got the actual value within metadata is I switched how the for loop worked and used this auto keyword and then the ampersand to get the actual value. And so that's how I obtained M. And this fixed the issues with Clang since now we're getting the actual value. We're not just getting a temporary reference like a shallow copy to it. And yeah, that's what I did to fix that. And this project after that, I had to use Git to add and then commit and then push the changes onto my onto my remote. And then from there, I submitted a pull request. And yeah, that's my project. And what I really liked about this is I learned that, you know, when you're working with the open source contribution, it's not just you just can just delve right into the code right away. I learned that there's a lot to first set up and things along that nature before you can start working on the open source project or any project in general. And I also learned, well, I already knew a lot about GitHub, but I got really familiar with GitHub, and this was my first time submitting a pull request, which helped me get familiar with that. So all the cloning, the creating a new branch in order to manipulate this for loop, all that stuff, it helped me get more familiar with Git. And this project as a whole got me more familiar with how I would work with something that I haven't touched before and getting used to stuff of that kind. And yeah, thank you.